Next question is, why is it, Rabbi, that we keep the Babylonian names, the pagan Babylonian names, for Jewish calendar months? Yeah.
Right.
I can't even ask that question any better than the way he worded it. That's just plain and simple.
Well, this is a very good question. First, as it turns out, many of these Babylonian months are all over the Jewish scriptures. So this is not like the prophets of Israel use these names. The prophets of Israel use these names. And the question is, in the early parts of the Jewish scriptures, we will have Nisan is not called Nisan. It's called the first month, but you'll find many of the Jewish months in Scripture used by the prophets of Israel, divinely inspired. And this comes to a very interesting question of why would we use Babylonian names? I have some theories on this, but I'll give you the most straightforward, simple answer, and that is the role of Judaism. It's that exotic, ecstatic image, the greatest dream in Torah, where Jacob at Bethel sees a ladder from earth going up to heaven. The role of the Jew is not to distance himself from this world, but to rather elevate what is in this world. And therefore, to take that which is mundane, a cow, take a ordinary an apple, or take something mundane, or take it and then raise it up into the spiritual, to raise things up to God. And therefore, we find this, of course, that the Jewish people will go into Bavel, but what they do is they take these names, and rather than abandon them, they take them and raise them up, and then apply them to the names of our months. So rather than saying, yeah, we're going to ignore these names and months that were used by other nations, we're going to raise it up, and we're going to make it exquisite. We're going to make it fantastic. We're going to raise it up to the spiritual. And that's a simple explanation of why the Jewish people, rather than say, we're going to ignore that, no. One thing that is vital, people may not understand this, why Babylon is so front and center. When the Jews were exiled after the destruction of the first temple, where virtually all, not all, but almost all the Jewish people went to Bavel, when the Shevavet Sion, which means the Zionists, those who return to Zion, when the Jews who return back to the land of Israel, all the Jews do not return. In fact, the Jews only one time were all gathered into the land of Israel, and it'll be a second time that all the Jews return, and that's in the Messianic age, and I believe we're seeing that before our eyes today. So, in fact, the first group, the first Aliyah, it's all really Messianic. The first Aliyah was primarily not really very religious Jews at all. 42,000. That's a very small smidget of the total number. Jews were doing very well in Bavel. The prophets had come there earlier. They'd set up enormous yeshivot in Hardo and Pumbedisa and so on. And Jewish life was extraordinary in Bavel. And in fact, there's an interesting conundrum that appears in the book of Zechariah, where the Jews of Bavel, who are really religious Jews, they're like from Brooklyn, but they like Brooklyn. So they were doing well in Bavel, and remember, they had Jewish life in Babylon, in what is today Iraq, would continue literally until 50 years ago, until the Babylonian Jewry would come to a close. There are no Jews left there today. So you actually have in Zechariah 6 a conundrum where a number of Jews come from Babylon. They're not making Aliyah, but they want to buy Israeli bonds. Well, not exactly. Well, they want to donate money to the temple. It means they're saying, look, we're in Babylon, we're staying in Babylon, but we want to donate money. And the question was, do we take money from Bavel, from Babylon, from Jews in diaspora? The answer was yes, and crowns were made and so on and so forth, and it becomes very, very, very precious. So the answer was the Jews sought wherever they went to take the mundane and raise it up, and even to take a name like Tammuz, which was a vegetation god of in Babylon, and elevate it up to make clean that which was unholy, to make it pure. And in fact, that's what was done on Hanukkah. You know, the Festival of Lights really was a much older Jewish holiday than Hanukkah. But what happened is that the non-Jewish, the pagan world, elevated the celebration of the sun. Almost all the pagan world, the big daddy god is the sun. And therefore the Jews sought in some sense to combat this and to have a festival of lights to saying, no, we worship the God of Israel. And Hanukkah comes together where the festival of lights is attached to Hanukkah, and it works out quite splendidly. So the Jews always sought to purify, to be mitar tameim, to purify these things and to raise them up to heaven, just as we raise up the mundane. And every day we take in a piece of steak, not so fast, make a bracha on it. We want to cleanse the world. We want to be a light to the nation. We want to shine light in every dark place in the world. And we do that through transformation, not by detachment. And that's what happens here. So that's a really good question. Okay. But it's biblical. We have many of these Jewish months that we call today, they're in the Bible. So one can just, all the warnings to those who are going to say anything, they're in the Bible. They're in Scripture. They're used in Scripture. They're used after the Jews are going to come into contact with Babylon. But the prophets used it. They sought to cleanse what was filthy.